Okay, perfect, cool. Then let's get these things started. As we heard in the introduction, we will talk today about security testing for chatbots, or more general for conversational AI. That's the first learning for today. Whenever you hear conversational AI, then it's meant to be chatbots or virtual assistants out there. And yeah, I tried to draw some attention here on the fact that this is kind of opening the box of Pandora, because testing conversational AI in general is not that easy, not comparable to what we have done in the last decades when we were testing, I don't know, mobile apps, websites, APIs, and so on. In addition to the introduction, you got about me some more words. You have heard I'm founder and CEO at Botium. For those who haven't heard about us, we are considered to be the leading industry standard when it comes to test automation for bots and virtual assistants. We're having right now something around about 200,000 users of our product, roughly 1,500 companies already testing with Botium their chatbots. Yeah, in one sentence, Botium is a comprehensive test automation suite for chatbots, and we are really having here, or trying to have, a big view on this topic, and using a holistic approach where we are combining functional and non-functional test types. You will see this later on, what it means. As you also heard, I'm organizer of the Bots Hub Vienna. This is the leading community around chatbots and conversational AI in Vienna, Austria. This is, by the way, where our head office is located, multiple keynote speaker. And maybe you have seen my kind of advertisement video for this webinar today, where I was playing a bit of drums also. If we don't have the time today to answer all your questions, it's pretty easy to stay in contact with me. You see here our website. You can write me direct emails if there are questions open or unanswered. You will find me on Git, on social media, and so on, using this Grisou Botium nickname. So whatever questions you have, just pass them through. I'm happy to answer them. Good. The playbook or agenda of today will be that, first of all, I'm trying to set a bit the context for you, to explain a bit why chatbots or conversational AI are considered to be these big game changers out there in the industry, why they are the trending topic right now in the whole IT industry. Then we will see a bit, or discuss, what happens when bots are failing and why they are failing in generally. Then we will have a short look on what users, what clients are expecting from bots, because this is the first time when also security comes into the game. And then I will tell you a bit about what you can test when it comes to bots, and how you should test this. We will have a short look on what it means to have a solid test plan, a solid test concept for conversational AI. Then we will do some maths, and I will show you why automation is the key enabler there. So to take it up front, when it comes to testing chatbots, there is no way around automation. And then we will deep dive into the security threats and attack vectors round about chatbots. So then it's really about pure security testing in detail. We will have a look on Crosssite Scripting, SQL injections, and adversarial attacks. And then at the end, if we have some time left, we will automate some security testing together, make it ready for pipeline integration. And yeah, I hope you will see how easy it is to do if you have the right tooling in place. So to get started, as being said before, I want to set the context a bit for you, why chatbots are so trendy, why everyone is working on some kind of bot implementation, and therefore this slide here from Hootsuite is pretty good to explain this. So the important numbers here are the first two. And you have to consider, first of all, that chatbots are living mainly on social media. Of course, chatbots are also there on websites, in mobile apps. And as a company, you will deploy it to every channel you can to. But from a marketing and business development perspective, the most interesting channels are or is social media. If you take the three biggest social messengers out there, which are right now WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, and WeChat, then you can reach around about 4.5 billion unique clients. Considering that we have right now, I think 7.7 or something billion people living on this world, it's more than half of the world population that you can reach. And this is, of course, something that no marketing department out there can oversee, around about 56.8%. This is why everyone is working on chatbots, first of all. And then I extended this hot suite slide a bit. So the last part here is from me, because this is a number that is interesting for every CFO out there of a company. The potential cost savings in human wage costs for this year by the use of chatbots is estimated with $267 billion US. So this is an enormous amount of money that no CFO out there can ignore. And together with this enormous potential of reaching people, this is why chatbots are so trendy, why everyone is working on them. In addition, a lot of other factors, for example, today it's necessary to provide this kind of user experience to your clients out there. I'm expecting also to get some, I don't know, support from my phone provider on Sunday evening when no real human being is sitting in a support center. And therefore, an experience that you can get from conversational AI has to be provided. But to be honest, the main factors are these three numbers here. Enormous amount of people to reach and enormous potential of cost savings. Considering this enormous potential, it's scary how weird some bots are acting and how dramatically they are failing. And therefore, I've given you here an example on this Alexa app where Alexa tells the user, just say, Alexa, order Lego Ninjago. And you can see that it fails miserably. It's always coming with, sorry, I'm having trouble, sorry, I'm having trouble. Actually, the user is trying here hard. I'm trying 3 different options of how to order something. I would have stepped out most probably after my first try. But yes, Alexa still was not able to identify the intent here the user wants to resolve to, and therefore we got as an answer always the so-called default fallback intent, second learning of today after the term conversational AI. So whenever you see something like, sorry, I don't understand, and so on, this is usually the default fallback intent that the chatbot gives you whenever he doesn't know what you want to do. So in this example, it's pretty easy to understand that Amazon will have a revenue loss, depending now on the time, how long it takes till they identify this problem. This revenue loss will be bigger. The fixing costs are pretty easy to estimate. But what's harder to find out is what about the reputation loss? And there you have to consider that conversational AI is mainly used by these millennials, by this new generation. That is every day in the morning, starting by talking to their Siri or Alexa on the phone and using bots all the time. And these people are also the people who are immediately kicking you in the internet with shitstorms if your products don't work. And this leads, of course, to a reputation loss. Now for Amazon, this won't be a very big deal, to be honest. And if I'm clearly honest, this example here is also a fake. But the next one I have here is a real one, to take it up front. I have covered here the airline that was having this problem because I don't want to put them into a bad light. They already have a lot of shitstorms going on, therefore I replaced it with an Bottom airline. But actually the case here happened like this. This airline changed the whole ticket booking process to a chatbot, which is in theory a good idea with all the potential you have there and the options. But as you can see in production, this ticket booking bot did not understand things like I want to book a flight, I want to buy a ticket, and so on. The only time when this bot could give a meaningful answer was when the client was pissed and said, I will take another airline. And apart from that, we always got here the default fallback intent, as we learned on the last slide, is something like, sorry, I cannot understand you. With this example, it makes more sense when we are talking about reputation loss, because also here the airline was usually selling, it's a pretty big airline, to be honest, a few 100,000 tickets a month. So they could say for these 4 or 5 days when this was happening, we usually sell a few thousand tickets. So the revenue loss is X million. Plus, they could say to fix this stuff, we had to repair our training data, costs again, I don't know, X thousand and so on. But what is really hard to estimate is the reputation they lost, because what happened on the internet is that a lot of shitstorms were coming up and people were building up stories around this and asking questions like, if this airline does not care about quality assurance for their IT products, for their bots, do they care about quality assurance for their airplanes? Do they care about the education of their pilots and so on? And actually, this reputation loss here for this airline was enormous, and this is a good example to understand why it is so important to test these chatbots out there. Yeah, and as I've said before, this is a true example that really happened like this. And I have some more from big companies here, like the Weather Channel out there, where the user asks simple questions and always gets sorry, there was an error and so on, or the Dallas Mavericks, an enormous big football team in America, or other Mavericks baseball, I don't know, but an enormous big team, yeah, and this chatbot, of course, should be able to answer a question like, when is the next game? And also here, sorry, I don't quite understand. So as we see, always the same problem. We always get here a default fallback intent. Also, the Chant Daily is an enormous big newspaper. And also here, the user is really trying hard to get some meaningful answer. And the bot just replies with nonsense. So, seeing these examples and considering the enormous potential we saw before, it's pretty strange why this is happening. Yeah, why are these bots failing when there is so much potential in using them? And the answer is pretty clear to take it up front. It's mainly a lack of testing and quality assurance. Yeah? So companies are developing bots, they are testing them for the day X when they put them live, but afterwards they forgot that they have to permanently test them. Yeah? Every little change in the training data and so on could result exactly in these things here. And yeah, this is a big mistake, and actually we still see this every day from enormous big companies. Good. Another important thing, and here for the first time security comes into the game, is to understand what clients are expecting from chatbots and virtual assistants. And to be honest, this is where every kind of product development should start. When you start to produce software or even some other product, I don't know, whatever you want to produce, you should start by asking yourself, what do our clients expect from our product? And having this enormous community, I told you in the beginning, we have around about 200,000 users already in our product. We can easily do research by asking them what expect your clients. And these here are the top 4 answers, and they are since years now always the same. Also in this order, the most important thing is always clients are expecting accurate answers from chatbots. And to be able to produce accurate answers, you need to have a well-thought conversational design behind to be able to deliver answers appropriate and quickly. Second most important thing is to provide a great user experience, and clients are expecting here the same seamless, great user experience throughout all their preferred channels. These millennials I've been talking about before are expecting the same user experience of your chatbot on your website, in your mobile app, and as well if they ask Alexa about your product, or if they talk to your chatbot on your WhatsApp channel and so on. Yeah, so they don't care if it might be easier for you to develop the bot on your website, because there everything is under your control. Versus when you develop a Facebook skill, then a lot of control is on the side of Facebook, and therefore it's harder to provide there the same user experience. Well, your clients don't care. They expect everywhere the same. And then number 3 here in the top 4 of user expectations is already security. So chatbot users out there have an awareness for security. They expect here state-of-the-art security and security testing, data privacy, and in Europe especially also GDPR compliance. And then number 4 is also, I think, kind of self-explaining. Users are expecting fast response, meaning that they expect excellence now and not in a few seconds, as as it's stated here, also in stressful days. This just means a user wants to have an immediate answer, and they don't care if it is, I don't know, Super Bowl weekend, and in this second, 100,000 users are talking in parallel to your chatbot. They don't care. They want to have immediate answers. Yeah? And as a chatbot provider, as a chatbot developer, as a chatbot tester, whatever you do in this environment, you have to make sure to fulfill exactly those 4 expectations. And the cool thing is, testing perspective, this is exactly what we did with our product. Yeah? And this is the answer to the question what and how you should test. In terms of accurate answers, you have to test your conversation flows to check if you are able to deliver answers appropriately and quickly. And testing conversation flows means really having conversations with your chatbot, talking to it, voice-based, text-based, whatever channel is supported there, but you really have to talk to a bot. And this is, to be honest, as close as you can get to an end customer. An end customer would always talk to a chatbot. But that's only half of the rent. The other side is to make sure that your training data is in a good state, is clean, and that your chatbot understanding is working. This is this typical NLP testing, NLP score testing. It's also often called NLP for those who haven't heard it before. It's the short term for natural language processing. It just describes what your chatbot will understand and what not. In terms of great user experience, you have to test for fragmentation. Yeah? So here I could have also called or done a talk and call it opening the box of Pandora, because for those who have been testing mobile apps or websites, fragmentation is already a very big topic, because you have various browsers, a Chrome, a Safari, a Firefox, an Edge, and so on, Opera. You have different versions of each browser. You have these different browsers and versions running on different operating systems, on Mac OS X, on the Linux distribution, on Windows, on different versions of these operating systems. Then when you go to mobile, you have this on different phone providers, different versions, and so on. And the same thing is there for chatbots, yeah? Because as being said before, they are operating mainly on social media, social messengers, and those are operating on mobile devices. So all this fragmentation stuff is still there. And in addition, new stuff is coming in. Yeah, for example, voice and IVR testing, as more than half of the chatbots out there are already really talking to their users. IVR, by the way, if you haven't heard it before, are interactive voice response systems. This is more or less the pre-stage of chatbots. These are these support lines where you hear something like, if you are interested in A, press 1, and so on. Yeah, this is more or less now replaced by chatbots, but in a lot of implementations, a bot and the IVR system are working together, and of course you have to test them fully end to end. And then once again, security is there. And here it's comparable to what we did in web and mobile app testing, because most chatbots out there are providing kind of a public web interface. Yeah? So if your chatbot is operating in your mobile app, on your website, or in a Facebook Messenger and so on, then it is just a public mobile interface. Yeah? And therefore it can be tested based on the same rules we have been using for websites and mobile apps. And there, the driving community behind is the OWASP community. For those who never heard about OWASP, Open Web Association Security Project, as being said, this is the driving project or community behind web and mobile security standards, and these standards also apply to chatbots as they are exposing a public web or mobile front end. And yeah, to test them, we will do it based on these OWASP standards. And in addition, of course, in Europe, you have to also test for GDPR compliance. And you would be surprised how many chatbots of our clients in Europe already fail with the very first basic question in GDPR testing that simply is, do you save my data? So every chatbot has to be able to answer this question. Actually, most are not. And then, yeah, fast response for this requirement of users. You should do performance testing, stress testing, load testing, producing a high load for a time period, for a given time period, typical load testing versus producing an increasing load for a time period, typically stress testing, to find the boundary of your chatbot or virtual assistant. As being said, actually, we have implemented in our Bottium box exactly those test types here. And the next slide here sums it up. These 6 test types here are what it needs to have a solid test plan in place, or call it a test concept, or however you call this in your project. But actually, this is a question we are getting a lot from big IT and test departments that were used to web, mobile, API, standalone application testing, or whatever in the last years, and are very experienced. They are really struggling in setting up, in creating and designing a test concept for the chatbots, because it's just a new topic. And the answer usually here is, well, you have to test your conversation flows, your dialogues. So add conversation flow testing in your test plan. You have to test permanently your chatbot understanding. So add NLP score testing. You have to test end-to-end for having a great user experience on all user channels. So add it there. In terms of security testing, bring continuous security testing automated into your pipeline. Yeah, this is the only way to go when it comes to chatbots. In terms of performance testing, load and stress testing to make sure that your bots are responsive under high load. And one last test type we didn't talk about, do monitoring. And monitoring is nothing less than testing. Yeah, monitoring means you send out every 2 minutes an automated test case that asks, for example, this airline chatbot that could not answer, I want to buy a ticket, exactly this question. Yeah, and you know, in every 2 minutes, then, well, the bot is there, he's replying, and he can answer this most important question that we have. And this is a test, this monitoring. And if you take now the 6 test types, combine them, and run them through your delivery pipelines with every single change you do. So everything that produces somewhere a commit, a change in some Git repo, no matter if this is the training data behind the bot, if this is the chatbot UI, whatever you do there, or if you just change the conversation flows, no matter what, trigger all these tests automated through your pipeline, and you will end up with the highest possible or best user experience and quality in production. And our designer tried here to make this a bit visible. Usually when our clients start to test and to automate the testing for the bots, they are somewhere here in this state of the left bot, where really the chatbot is, let's call it so-so. And by adding these test types step by step, the bot gets more and more mature, and at the end is really a great virtual assistant for their clients out there. Good. And then we are getting closer and closer to the security testing topic in detail. Maybe some more words for those who want to know what it means to go from a decent bot to really an incredible bot implementation. So in addition to these 6 test types, you can do more. And what else you can do, I tried to sum up here on this slide. First of all, one thing that is very important is humidification testing. And what humidification testing means is that you have to simulate typical human flaws, because this is what's happening out there in the production. This is, let's call it real life scenario testing or testing in the wild, however you want to name this. But the point here is, as long as you give your NLP engine perfect data, perfect input, it will be pretty easy to identify what you want. But if you inject some human typical flaws, and this could be something simple like a typo, when you're talking to a bot, most of the chatbot engines, the NLP engines, already start to fail. And this is actually a big problem, because these things are happening out there in production. And maybe I can show you an example here. So this is a demo bot I'm using on conferences, webinars, and so on. he can tell us who he is when I'm asking him, who are you? And what about if I do this, just miss here the E, then a good NLP engine should be able to identify what I want and give me an answer. And actually we can see this one is not, it's already failing. And we are getting this default fallback intent. Remember, our second learning was if a chatbot doesn't know what we want, we will get mainly a default fallback intent is typically, sorry, I don't understand. And actually, this is happening a lot out there in production. Yeah, well, let's say who are, and I just do a typer here with the U and the O. What happens? Okay, this one, the NLP engine is able to detect. Let's try it like this. And again, it's failing. Yeah, so this is typical humidification testing. This is injecting typically human flaws. And there are a lot of typical human flaws. There are people who are doing something like this, who enter, you enter, and so on. So a good chatbot implementation should take care here of the context, wait a bit, and then try to give an answer. So actually, as we can see here, my demo bot is failing miserably. Although it's based on Google Dialogflow, one of the biggest and for sure best bot building platforms out there in NLP engines. So this is what is meant when it comes to humidification testing, and actually something where you can really bring your decent bots to an incredible state. Another thing is context testing. This is about understanding the context, remembering stuff. So if I'm talking today, I don't know, to my insurance bot, and I don't know, what would be an example? I want to insure a new car, and the bot asks me about which brand is it, and I don't know how many seats, whatever it needs. And I end the conversation, and maybe tomorrow I talk again to the bot. He should know what I told him today. It shouldn't be like, oh, tell me all the facts again and so on. So this is typical context testing. How is this context there? How is a bot dealing with it? How long is it saved? And so on. Another thing that really makes a difference between these and incredible bots is profile testing, or here also in the brackets, machine learning operations. So here it's really about connecting data. So we all know that close to all companies out there are collecting data of their clients. You have a CRM system. You know stuff about your client. Well, then you should use this information in a conversation. Coming back to the insurance example, the chatbot should know based on the data it could access in the backend that I already have, I don't know, another car insured at this insurance company, or my wife has a car there, and therefore I should get a discount and so on. So he shouldn't ask me about these things. He should know it, and he should make these connections. And of course, these things have to be tested. Then navigation and routing through a conversation is also an important topic. So this is it's not easy to test, yeah, but it's something you should take care about. Some conversations can be done in 3 or 4 conversation steps, or in 20. And of course, you shouldn't waste here the time of a user, and therefore the routing through a conversation flow has to be tested. And finally, one last thing that should be also tested is the use of human escalation protocols. So most of the good chatbot implementations out there have some kind of escalation mechanism included. And what this means is just whenever a bot reaches a state where he cannot give a meaningful answer, he hands over to a human support agent. Something like, so instead of sorry, I don't understand, like we saw it before, the bot would say something like, sorry, I cannot help you further here, but I will connect you now to a human agent, and he or she will help you. And of course, it's not about only testing here that the handover will work. It's also testing about the third-party systems that are included here. Typically, chatbot would hand over all the collected data from the conversation I had before with him to the human person in the support center. So if we stay with this car insurance example, it would hand over to a human agent. This agent would have some kind of ticket on the screen that shows well, this is the client, Christoph, he wants to insure a new car of that brand. His wife has already a car insured with us, so he should get this discount, and he has now this question that I cannot answer. And these flows have to be tested, of course, and if you take these things into consideration, in combination with the fundamentals here, and run these tests, as being said, automated through your pipelines, whenever a change happens, then you will deliver outstanding and great chatbots. Good, and this last example here of automation and a bit of calculation is the last topic before we dive deeper into the security testing for conversational AI. I just want to give you here a basic understanding of why test automation is so important for chatbots. To explain it on an easy level is, maybe I go back here to my demo bot. Actually, for us as a tester, this here is the problem. Here's an input box from this chatbot, and in this input box, I can input everything. So if this is a banking bot, I could ask, what is my account balance? And then most probably the chatbot asks me, well, what is your account ID? And then I can tell you what is your account balance. But if it is a banking bot, also nothing blocks me from asking what is the weather in Vienna. And of course, this bot doesn't have an answer here because he's not a weather bot. And this is the problem. The number of potential test cases here is infinitely large because these chatbot implementations usually have no barriers. And it's getting even worse here, because this bot also understands voice. So I can just click here the little recording icon and say, what is the weather in Vienna? And then audio file is set there. The speech to text is done, as you can see here, but still, of course, the bot cannot answer the question because there is no training data for it. It's simply not a weather bot. But the point that I want to make is you cannot block a user here from doing things like that. And therefore, test sets are in theory infinitely large, which is, of course, a problem for especially when we talk about traditional KPIs like having a test coverage of X%. Well, if the number of tests is infinitely large, how big can your test coverage be? And this is something that very skilled testers, test managers, also business people have to learn and understand. When it comes to conversational AI, things are a bit different. So this is the first point why automation is so important. And the second point is, and this is of course connected, usually your bots know about a few hundred intents. So this is typically what we see at our client side, and this is exactly also the calculation here I have on the slide. So a typically agile chatbot project of these 1,200 or 300 companies that are using our Botium box has weekly sprints and does something like 100 builds a sprint, meaning that the team is there doing 100 changes every week. This sounds a lot. Actually, it is not, because usually you have a few test environments, a dev environment where you immediately push small changes. Then you have maybe after the dev environment, a system test environment, a system integration test environment, a user acceptance test environment, and then production. So 5 environments, meaning that if you do one small change, it triggers already 5 builds. So 20 changes would already end up in 100 builds here, and 20 changes for a whole team in a whole week is not a lot. So this is typically basic setting. And then for the calculation here, and to understand why automation is so mandatory, we have to have a look at the training data a bit. I do a lot of other talks where we are deep diving into NLP engines, NLU, how this works, and what training data is built on. Just here a small example for those who haven't heard this before. Intents are the topics a bot can talk about. Something like if you're talking about a banking bot, an account balance, or a lost credit card or something, or need a loan. So these are typically topics. So and the typical client of ours knows 250 of these topics. And inside the training data, you have, apart from these topics, different variations how a user could ask for this topic. Yeah, and usually we see something like round about 100 variations for each of these intents, these topics. Yeah? So something like to get your account balance, you could ask for what is my account balance, how much money do I have, how much money is left, do I have cash, whatever. I think you can imagine. So 100 different versions of asking for my account balance. And if you multiply those two numbers now with each other, meaning 250 intents with 100 utterances, you end up already in 25,000 conversations in your training data. And to be honest, these are the things you are already expecting. Yeah, these conversations, this training data is coming from your business people, your conversation designers, your support department, where you sit together when you design and plan your chatbot, and where people are telling you, well, this is what our chatbot should be able to handle, and this is how clients will ask for it. Yeah, so these are the things you're already expecting. These are not the unexpected stuffs like what is the weather being asked to the banking chatbot. Yeah? And if we take these 25,000 conversations, 25,000 test cases for the testers, and multiply it with these 100 builds that we are doing every week, and remember, it's just 5 test environments. At the end, it was just 20 small changes. We are ending up at 2.5 million tests here a week. And I think now the last one should be convinced in the call here that there is only one way of doing 2.5 million tests every week. And this is having major and strong automation. I put it here again, we are running with a typical client 2.5 million tests every sprint. This is just the happy path, as being said. These are these conversations here that we are already expecting. This is only conversation flow testing. Remember before I had a slide, we talked about what does it mean to have a solid test plan. There was this security testing we are coming to now. There was end-to-end testing. There was NLP score testing. These 2.5 million tests only cover the dialogues, the conversation flow itself. So another reason why there is no way around automation. And finally, I also put here, what about all the unexpected inputs? What about clients asking for a completely different way about their account balance? What about those clients asking about the weather and so on? So to make it short, once again, the key enabler, and this was here on the last slide, for testing conversational AI, meaning chatbots and virtual assistants, simply is automation. There is no way of doing these tests manually. And yeah, by the way, here's an example that you will also find on our website from a typical client, what it meant or means after they bring automation in place. So this client had resources of 300 hours a week to run manual tests. And they did 100% manually. And after implementing their test automation, they have manual efforts of 26 hours, so 93% of time saving. But the important thing here is that is not mentioned in this picture. In the 300 hours, these 5 or 6 testers a week could run, I don't know, a few thousand conversations. Now they have reduced the testing efforts by 93%, and they are running 2.5 million tests. This is a very important factor. Good. And now we deep dive a bit in the topic of security testing, which is super cool, super challenging for conversational AI, based on the things we have already heard. Good. First of all, let's talk a bit about security threats and attack vectors of typical chatbot architectures. I have said it already before when security testing was first on the slide. Most chatbots out there are exposing some kind of public web or mobile front end. So no matter if your chatbot is operating on your company website, on your company mobile app, if it's in WhatsApp, in the Facebook Messenger, in WeChat, wherever it appears, it's some kind of a web or mobile front end. And for those front ends, of course, the always top 10 security risks apply and are the ones to be tested. So for those who are not that technical, this here is a web front end. This widget here of the chatbot is a typically web front end. So here we can test based on OWASP standards for security. And the three vulnerabilities and security threats that are most important when it comes to conversational AI. Out of the OWASP top 10 are, first of all, cross-site scripting. Problem here usually is that input data is not validated and sanitized. Second biggest problem are SQL injections, with having the aim of just executing or querying some malicious SQL code and statements. And then the third one, and they are not part of the OWASP top 10 yet, but they might be there in future, are these adversarial attacks that are targeting really NLP models. In this case, when we're talking about chatbots, and the typical attack would be here in manipulated audio stream, where we enter some background noise or something similar that cannot be heard even by a human being, but that will make the chatbot act completely differently. We will see this later on a live example where we'll play an audio file to a chatbot to do something basic like tell us what time it is, and the outcome will be something completely different. And this happens because I injected here some noise in this audio file that we all cannot hear, but the chatbot can. Good, and now we will have a bit of closer look, starting with cross-site scripting. This is in the list of OWASP top 10, the number 3, therefore I highlighted it here a bit. And yeah, a typical chatbot front-end implementation consists out of a chatbot window overall. We have a user input field where here the placeholder ask something is, and whatever I put here will be more or less mirrored or shown in the chat window itself here. So in this case, I've said hi to the bot, he gave us an answer, I said, who are you? And so on. So it's exactly this bot here you might have realized, and exactly this conversation here. I'm entering in the input field some text, who are you? And it's going to be replicated here in the chat window. And what is happening here when we are talking about cross-site scripting is that a typically attack scenario would be that a user tries to enter here malicious JavaScript code in this input field that we have. Now, so exactly the same as an attacker would try on an input field of some mobile or web application. And in worst case, as we have heard before on the overview slide, the data I have entered here is not getting sanitized, it's not validated, and the chatbot widget here just executes or runs the JavaScript code, and then the cross-site scripting attack is fulfilled. And let's have a look what my chatbot does when I try this. So we'll write here a little JavaScript snippet, and we will just alert the content of my session cookie here. So usually, or not only usually, I'm logged in here in Dialogflow to have access to my chatbot, and therefore something like the session ID might be in the cookie, maybe even some user ID and so on. And in best case, we are getting now a message from the bot, this is not possible, or he is just showing us exactly this in clear text. But what actually happens, typo here, is that the chatbot is revealing here confident data. So I'm getting here obviously some session key data, some whatever ID. I'm seeing what is the user being logged in. So worst case, as an attacker having this data, I could do already a lot of stuff. I could replicate this session and log in now on another machine to my Google Dialogflow account. And from my Google Dialogflow account, it's just a minor step to our overall company Google account, and there you can do a lot of harm in just a few seconds. And this is a typical example for potential cross-site scripting attacks. Good. Yeah, typical defense, I've mentioned this now a few times, would be to validate and sanitize all the user inputs. This should be really state of the art. By the way, cross-site scripting is the attack that happens the most out there, yeah, with these little JavaScript snippets. Could be also other programming languages. It's just pretty easy to show. With JavaScript, a possible attack vector would be that someone just tricks a victim, sending a hyperlink that points to a chatbot and already has some malicious code in this link. This malicious code is then injected into this chatbot web front end, reads stuff like the cookie as I've just shown you live, and the user is not even noticing this. Yeah, so in a real life scenario, I would of course not alert here this cookie content. I would just send it via email or whatever, or provide it somehow else. To me as an attacker, I would not show it here to the user with an alert box. This of course makes no sense, but for showcasing here, it's good. Yeah, and this would be pretty easy and typically attack vector, and you would be surprised in how much productive bots out there this is still possible and is obviously not tested. Good. Another point are SQL injections, also part of number 3 in the over top 10 list. They are typically oriented to backend implementation of chatbots, where a user tells a bot about some information item, and then we are querying through the backend data source to get more informations, and based on the result, some natural language response is generated and presented to the user. This is how typically chatbot backend is implemented. And what happens here is, in terms of an attack, that someone will try to trick this backend to consider malicious content as part of the information item. And this is simply by trying to inject some malicious SQL code. Like here, it says my order number is 1234. When the chatbot asks for an order number and just adds here an SQL command like delete from orders, which would empty this table. Typically, attack vector would be here. If I have access to some chatbot front end of a user, I could try to directly exploit here stuff with an SQL injection. It can be also a NoSQL based query. This is all more or less unlimited, and we can also try out this because I have here account balance in this chatbot. So when I ask what is my account balance, then of course the bot asks for my account ID, as I have various accounts, and instead of now just saying my ID is 12345, we will say in addition from transactions. So instead of showing me my account balance, this would trigger now to delete all rows in the transactions table. Makes not a big sense. Don't know why you would delete all rows there, but just to show you the basic principle. And of course, the bot should now again validate, sanitize these inputs, and not just take it and do something. But if I hit enter here, we see that 117 rows were obviously deleted by this bot. So the whole list of transactions is now empty. Yeah, this of course opens here again the door for a lot of attacks out there. Instead of deleting transactions, I could add stuff. I could maybe, if this is a shared database with other clients, I could delete their data, add their data, whatever. I could also say here, instead of this, try something like and update my balance to a higher value, whatever. So this is of course something that should be not possible, but obviously in my chatbot implementation here, it is. Good. And then we are coming to the newest type of attack here for chatbots, and these are so-called adversarial attacks. And these attacks are typically targeting at classifiers. And typically the natural language processing model is backing a chatbot basically with text classifiers. And very famous examples here are this tricking of image classifiers by adding some tiny noise that a human eye cannot see. So you have here on the left side an original image that the image classifier would identify as a pig. And by adding just a minor bit of noise, the image classifier would say, well, it's an airliner and not a pig anymore. But for us as human beings, the picture looks still exactly the same. Yeah? And the idea here is to identify blind spots in the classifier by applying these tiny invisible changes or noise to the input data. And you might now ask yourself, how is this applicable to chatbots and conversational AI? Well, I gave you before an example with an audio file that you modify, and this is just here summed up again. So this concept can be applied to voice applications. In text-based chatbots, I do not really see here a use case, because to add noise here, you would add characters, you would have to add whole words, and this should be immediately noticed by the user of the chatbot. But yeah, what happens is, and this is the typical text scenario, you have some background noise in an audio file that might not be noticed by you as a human listener, but it could trigger some IoT devices, for example, in the background. Yeah, some Alexa, if you have, for example, a smart lock on your doors or something, to say, let's open the door. Yeah, and maybe some attacker could then get into your apartment or whatever. Yeah, possible attack vectors, handing over control to the attacker based on manipulated audio streams. This is what I told you. It's about exploiting weaknesses in the speech recognition. Yeah, tricks by, this is all clear. Let's see it, how this looks in the real world. So once again, this chatbot here understands voice. So if I hit here the record button, I can say, who are you? And he will do the speech to text and gives me an answer. And instead of now talking by myself to this bot, I will play an audio file that will ask what time is it. And actually this chatbot can give us the answer. So he would say it's 31 minutes after 4. But I injected some background noise, and you can listen very closely, and you will not hear it, this background noise, but this background noise is enough to trigger the chatbot to do something completely different. So let's try it.
What time is it?
Oh, I think.
What time is it?
Okay, now it worked, and you see what happened. Yeah, so the speech to text was working correctly, but obviously based on the background noise, something completely different happened here. Yeah? And in this case, my chatbot would have unlocked all doors in my apartment that have one of these smart locks connected to it. And that's a typical attack that can happen voice-based on this adversarial attack level, and yeah, pretty new thing, not easy to test, especially when it comes to voice, but something we have to test. Good, and this was the theory part, and in the abstract of this talk, I also promised to do with you some live testing, some live security testing, and the main aim here is to show you that we are, of course, talking about a complex thing, a complex topic. Testing for conversational AI in general is a pretty new discipline. You have seen there's a lot of stuff to do. And in addition, there comes this security thing. But with having the right tooling in place, it doesn't have to be that complicated. Yeah? And therefore, I'm going to show you our bottom box. So I'm not going to do here advertisement for our product. I just want to give an impression how easy it can be with the right tooling in place. I'm in our quick start menu, and what will we test? We will take some chatbot we already have connected, and actually this guy is called BadBot, so he will act pretty bad. I'm pretty fast already, but to give an impression, you have to select here your bot you want to test, and then you are already on a level where you can tell our bottom box which tests you want to execute. And if you remember on the slides we had before, saying what does it mean to have a solid test concept in place, which tests should you execute, what are the mandatory test types, then you see here exactly those 6, regression, performance, security, monitoring and production, NLP testing, and end-to-end testing. And if I skip here the pre-selected regression testing and instead select here the security testing, then you can already see or get an idea of what will happen. Yeah, so we will run then in a few seconds continuous security tests based on OWASP. We'll use the set attack proxy. For those who haven't heard about this one, it's more or less a proxy that is in between our product and the chatbot, and all communication is going through this proxy. And every single conversation inside is tested there for the latest, I think, 300 or something vulnerabilities. Based on this OWASP top 10 list. Yeah? So we have their Crosssite Scripting, we have their SQL injections, and so on. In addition, we will trigger pen tests based on data sets that are already prepared here out of the box. Once again, with web application security risk testing. And finally, for these adversarial attacks and for GDPR, we will run even more tests. And that's already it. As a test engineer, or if you are from business or whatever, you say, I want to do security testing for our chatbot. You give your project a name. And then that's it. You hit your go button, go, and the rest is happening magically in the background, as you can see. Test projects are generated here out of the box, and the first security tests are already running. So this, we more or less have here a test suite that is acting itself as a bot, talking now to the productive bot we are testing and trying out all possible security vectors and threats. So exactly these things that we done here. So trying, like here, alerting the cookie content and so on. Typical test cases and scenarios like this are happening now out of the box. Of course, as there are a few hundred different ones of those, it will take some time till we get a result, I think a few minutes. But actually, I have run these tests before in preparation. We can already have a look. What will be the outcome? So this is a nice one. So you can see here stuff like, for example, sending special characters. This is also part of OWASP, where a chatbot should be able to give a meaningful answer. You can see here typical input for this kind of security tests that are happening. What else can we have a look at? More interesting will be these tests that are close to be finished. So this one is super interesting because it's a very short conversation that we tested. We just said hello. The bot said, I don't understand you. But the more interesting thing, finally, when the test is finished, will be if we found some security issues, and there we go. So if you haven't seen this product before, a test result usually consists out of a real representation of the dialogue of the conversation with the chatbot, so saying hello, and he says, I don't understand you. But with just saying hello, you can see here that 16 security issues were detected. And what you get here is stuff like, what is the security risk? I don't know, if we take this one, the alert is that there's obviously a cross-domain misconfiguration. You get an evidence for this. You get a potential solution, how to fix this, telling you that ensure that sensitive data is not available in an unauthenticated manner, and so on. And in close to all cases, we are even generating here an external link, usually at the OWASP guys. Okay, this link has been removed. Let's try another one. Yes, stuff like this, where you really see what was the problem, what is causing it, how can we fix it, and so on. So in short, what you get here is the whole thing. So you don't need to be a security test engineer to first of all find the problems, and second, also not to understand what is causing them and how to fix them. Because all of this is coming here, as being said before, with the right tooling already out of the box. You get here, this is the problem in detail, this is the evidence, this is a solution to this problem, and if this is not enough for your developers, well, here is an in detail description of these things. And this is how this easy security testing should work. And the cool thing is, and I'm already coming to my end because I'm reaching my 15 minutes, as I see, by setting up these tests, just going through our quick start wizard, we also have triggered here the whole build server integration. Yeah, for this security test project that was set up here automatically, we have a webhook, a CLI command, and also a curl command that we can call now, meaning that from our product delivery pipeline, we would just, when we change something in the product, call then this webhook that I'm calling now just from a browser. And in the background here, you see immediately there was a test result generated and downloaded now as a JSON. And in our test results, we can see, okay, the tests are running again because I just triggered it through this webhook. And this is what you would do in your pipeline. And this is what we had before on this slide with these big numbers, yeah, running 2.5 million tests a week. To be able to do this, you need full automation. You need a high degree of automation with quality gates on all your stages in your delivery pipeline. And this is what the right tooling should do for you. It should be as easy as you have seen it. You choose your chatbot, whatever. You say, I want to run these tests and so on. I hit next and I say, well, dear tool, do the rest for me when I hit this button here, yeah, including all the pipeline integration, just showing me the results and highlighting really what are our problems out there and are we ready to ship stuff into production. Good, and that's it more or less from my side. This was the live example. I hope you got an impression how easy it is by using our bot in box. By the way, if you want to try this out, we have a free version of it. So on our website, you can just register here and usually a few minutes, in worst case, after one business day, you get your own domain here, whatever you registered, and you can immediately start testing. Cool. And then I would say I'm ready for your questions. I'll try to answer all of them.